There is a city in West Africa where ambition never sleeps, where the traffic hums like a prayer and the hustle has a heartbeat of its own. Lagos, beautiful, ruthless, and completely unforgettable. It is a city that builds men and breaks them in the same afternoon, where fortunes are made before breakfast and lost before dinner. And somewhere in this glorious chaos, God was writing a story. He was one signature away from becoming a billionaire, one signature away from losing his soul. And heaven was watching. Now, this is not a motivational story. No, this is a warning and a promise. Because what you are about to hear actually happened, and it will change the way you think about patience, integrity, and the terrifying silence of God. His name was Tobi Adeyemi, and this is what happened when heaven tested his faith. With 48 billion naira. But before the billions, before the boardrooms and the betrayal, there was a boy and a prayer. A boy kneeling on a thin mattress in Ajegunle, rain leaking through the zinc roof, believing that God would show up. Of course, trusting God is easy when you have nothing. It becomes complicated when you finally have something to lose. Ajegunle, Lagos, early 2000s. If you know, you know. And if you don't, count your blessings. This was not a neighborhood. It was a test of endurance disguised as a postal address. The Adeyemi family lived in a one-room apartment. One room for cooking, sleeping, praying, and pretending everything was fine. When it rained, the zinc roof did not protect them. It simply announced the rain louder. Tobi's mother, her name was Grace, and she lived up to it, was a prayer warrior. The kind of woman who could kneel for 3 hours straight and stand up like she just had a spa treatment. She believed God when belief made absolutely no sense. His father, once a mechanic with strong hands and a proud spine, now lay in bed most days, coughing through the nights. Medicine bottles lined up on a small wooden table like soldiers losing a war. Poverty wasn't a phase in that house. Poverty was furniture. But young Tobi, this boy was different. Every night he would kneel by his thin mattress and pray. Not the casual prayers of a child asking for toys. No, these were the prayers of someone negotiating with heaven. He read the Bible like other children read comic books. Cover to cover, dog-eared pages, underlining verses with a pencil that was barely holding itself together. His favorite? Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. His classmates mocked him, called him Pastor Tobi. His teachers pitied him, the quiet boy with holes in his shoes and fire in his eyes. But something in that boy burned differently, something that mockery could not extinguish and pity could not dampen. One evening, sitting beside his mother on the floor, he looked up at her and said, "Mama, one day, God will change our story." She smiled, because mothers always smile when their children speak of impossible things. But somewhere behind that smile, she believed him. Tobi got into the University of Lagos, not on a scholarship, not on connections, on sheer unreasonable stubbornness. The kind of stubbornness that makes Lagos itself look flexible. He sold recharge cards during the day, fixed laptops at night, slept in lecture halls when his hostel mates locked him out for not paying rent. You see, in Lagos, even your roommates will teach you about capitalism. He ate once a day, sometimes not at all, but he studied like a man possessed. Accounting, because numbers don't lie, even when people do. And Tobi had seen enough liars to last a lifetime. While other students were chasing girls and attending parties, Tobi was chasing grades and attending tutorials he couldn't afford. He sat in the front row of every lecture, not because he was eager, because the front row had the best lighting for reading at night. He graduated. Not first class. He did not have the luxury of only studying, but he graduated. And that, in itself, was a small miracle wrapped in sweat and prayer. Now you would think Lagos would celebrate him, throw a parade, hand him a job. But Lagos, being Lagos, does not throw you a party. It throws you into the deep end, and then it watches to see if you can swim. He took odd jobs, ran errands for men who wore suits but had no integrity. He slept in his car, when he finally got one. A 1998 Toyota that drank fuel like water and had air conditioning that only worked as a concept. He started writing business plans. Beautiful, detailed, ambitious business plans. Nobody read them. He sent proposals to offices that never replied. He knocked on doors that stayed shut. Lagos was testing him again, and Lagos does not grade on a curve. But here is what Tobi did not know. While he was knocking on doors that would not open, God was building a door that no man could shut. Heaven was not ignoring him. Heaven was preparing him, because the truth is, God does not waste seasons. Every empty stomach, every cold night in that Toyota, every ignored business plan, it was all becoming something. Tobi just could not see it yet, but God could, and God was watching. At 32 years old, Tobi Adeyemi did what every dreamer in Lagos eventually does. He bet on himself. He rented a small office in Yaba, the Silicon Valley of Lagos. 2 laptops, 1 ceiling fan that worked when it felt like it, and a dream so big it barely fit through the door. He built a logistics tech company, the kind that makes deliveries faster and middlemen nervous. At first, nobody paid attention, because in Lagos, everybody has a startup. Everybody has a vision board, but not everybody has the discipline to show up on Monday after a terrible Friday. Tobi showed up every single Monday. Within 2 years, the company started growing. He hired staff, real staff, not cousins pretending to know Excel. Engineers, accountants, people who actually replied to emails. Within 5 years, Tobi was no longer just successful, he was influential. He attended cocktail parties where oil executives swirled whiskey and spoke in billions. He shook hands with senators who smelled like cologne and corruption. And somehow, he kept his hands clean. Or so he believed. The first thing he did when the money came, the very first thing, was buy his parents a house in Lekki. Not Ajegunle, Lekki. His mother cried the kind of tears that don't need an explanation. His father, now walking with a stick, simply nodded and said, "God did it." And Tobi believed that too. He started attending one of those big churches, the kind with a parking lot bigger than his old neighborhood. He gave generously. He prayed publicly. He tithed like a man trying to keep heaven's attention. Oh yes, God was good. But here is the thing about success. And listen carefully, because this part is important. Success does not just open doors, it opens traps. Beautifully decorated traps, with champagne and handshakes, and contracts that look like blessings but read like curses. You see, when you are poor, temptation comes dressed in rags. Easy to spot, easy to refuse. But when you are rich, temptation wears a 3-piece suit, carries a briefcase, and calls you Sir. And it does not knock, it sends an invitation. Tobi had built everything the right way, brick by brick, prayer by prayer. But the thing about building something beautiful in Lagos is that somebody, somewhere, is already planning how to use it. And that somebody had just found Tobi's phone number. And then the call came. A government infrastructure contract. Logistics coordination across 3 states. The kind of contract that makes accountants weep with joy. 48 billion naira. Yes, billion, with a B. Tobi flew to Abuja. And if Lagos is a battlefield, Abuja is the war room. Everything there is polished. The roads, the buildings, the lies. Especially the lies. The hotel was 5-star, the kind where they fold your towels into swans and put chocolates on your pillow like you are royalty. Tobi had never seen a towel swan before. He almost took a picture. Almost. A senior government official met him in a private suite. The man wore an agbada that probably cost more than Tobi's first car. His shoes were Italian, his smile was rehearsed, and his handshake, firm. The kind of firm that says, "I own this conversation." The official explained the deal. Simple, clean, beautiful even. Just approve adjusted logistics figures. Nothing dramatic. Just inflate numbers here and there. A little padding. A little creative accounting. Everyone does it. Even the Christian CEOs. Especially the Christian CEOs. Mr. Adeyemi, this is how the system works. Of course it is. The system always works, until God interrupts it. But Tobi did not argue. He did not preach. He simply asked for one night to review the documents. 3 nights. 3 nights without sleep. Tobi paced that hotel room like a man trapped inside his own conscience. His phone buzzing every few minutes. The board wanted an answer. His investors expected growth. His CFO kept sending spreadsheets that all pointed to one word: yes. His pregnant wife called from Lagos. She didn't know the details, but she heard it in his voice. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." He wasn't fine. He was anything but fine. His mother needed surgery. A hip replacement that cost more than most Nigerians earn in 10 years. The money from this deal could save her. And that is how the devil designs his traps. He wraps them in love. And God? God was silent. Isn't it interesting how heaven becomes quiet when the stakes are highest? When you need a voice from above the most, all you hear is the ceiling fan. He prayed. Nothing. He fasted. Silence. He bargained with God like a market trader in Balogun. "Lord, if you just give me a sign, I will build you a cathedral." Still nothing. On the 4th night, exhausted and broken, he opened his Bible one last time. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." He closed the Bible, sat on the edge of the bed, and whispered, "Okay." Not loudly, not dramatically, just, "Okay." And sometimes, that is the bravest prayer a man can pray. Conference room, Abuja. Everyone seated. The air conditioning was working, but nobody in that room was cool. Tobi looked at the contract, looked at the numbers, looked at the men who expected him to sign, and then he did something that Abuja had not seen in a long time. He pushed the contract back across the table and said, "I cannot approve falsified numbers." The silence that followed was not golden, it was dangerous. The kind of silence that precedes earthquakes and career funerals. The government official smiled, the way a man smiles before he buries you. He leaned forward and whispered, "You will regret this, Mr. Adeyemi." Back in Lagos, the house mortgaged, the car repossessed. His wife cried at night when she thought he was sleeping. She never blamed him, not once. And somehow, that made it worse. A baby was born during this season. A son. Tobi held that boy in his arms and wept. Not tears of joy, tears of a man wondering if he had misheard God. If faith had made him a fool. Choosing God sounds powerful in sermons, inspirational on Instagram. But in reality, when the rent is due and your friends have all mysteriously lost your number, it is terrifying. "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Tobi said it, through clenched teeth. Six months passed. 6 quiet months. And then, the news broke like thunder. Every television in Lagos was showing the same thing. The Abuja contract, investigated, exposed, billions unaccounted for. And the whole country was watching. The EFCC raided offices in broad daylight. computers seized, documents hauled out in boxes. The senior official, the one who leaned across the table and whispered, "You will regret this," arrested, dragged out in handcuffs like a common thief, which, to be fair, is exactly what he was. Multiple CEOs who signed that contract, under investigation, their accounts frozen, their reputations finished. The men who once sat in leather chairs and laughed at Tobi's principles were now sitting in interrogation rooms explaining their signatures. And buried deep in the investigation files, one name stood out, not as a suspect, but as the only man who said no. Tobi Adeyemi, the difficult man, the stubborn one, the fool who walked away from 48 billion naira. Suddenly, nobody was laughing. The phone calls started coming. The same people who cut him off were now trying to reconnect. But Tobi did not pick up those calls. He had learned that loyalty tested in darkness does not need validation in the light. But heaven was not done. An international infrastructure consortium based in London had been watching the scandal unfold. They needed a Nigerian partner. But not just any partner. They needed someone with a clean record, someone whose name had never appeared on a bribe sheet, someone untouchable. And guess whose name stood alone, shining like gold in a pile of ash? Tobi Adeyemi. The new contract was not 48 billion naira, it was 120 billion, fully transparent. International oversight, no bribes, no inflated numbers, no whispered threats in government offices. The CEO from London looked at him and said, "We heard you walked away from 48 billion. Tobi smiled and said, "I did not walk away from anything. I walked toward something better. Because when God removes something from your hands, it is not punishment. It is positioning." 3 years later, Tobi's company had expanded across West Africa. Not just Lagos, not just Nigeria. The boy from Ajegunle was now building something that even his mother's boldest prayers had not imagined. He built hospitals, funded scholarships for children in Ajegunle, children just like him, supported churches quietly, without cameras, without press releases, because real generosity does not need an audience. And here is the part that will make you sit up straight. His wealth, his legitimate, God-blessed wealth, surpassed what the fraudulent contract had promised. Every single naira. God did not just match the devil's offer, he exceeded it. And he did it without a single compromise. But his peace, oh, his peace, that was the real fortune. The Bible says, "The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and he adds no sorrow." No sleepless nights, no fear of investigators knocking at his door, no guilt eating him alive at 3 in the morning. Just peace, the kind of peace that money cannot buy and corruption cannot counterfeit. Then, years later, Tobi stood on a stage in Lagos. Not a small stage, a grand one. Thousands of young entrepreneurs staring up at him, hungry for wisdom, desperate for direction. And he said something that silenced the room. God's time is never late. It only feels late to impatient people. Integrity may empty your hands for a season, but it fills your destiny forever. Do not sell your future for a shortcut, because shortcuts in Lagos always have a long way back. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. And somewhere in Ajegunle tonight, another boy is kneeling beside a thin mattress, praying, believing, and heaven is watching.
Did this story move you? Drop a comment and tell us your favorite line. Subscribe for more powerful African stories told like never before. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload.